What's up, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast, and today we have got massive upside. That's right, we have got 12 players in fantasy football drafts that you need to be targeting that have got all the upside in the world. And joining me on the podcast today, of course, we've got the great and powerful Pat Fitzmaurice, and joining us on the show is Mr. Joe Dolan, owner and editor-in-chief over at Fantasy Points, host of Football Game Day over on SiriusXM. Mr. Joe Dolan, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, guys. How about you? They're currently we're maybe pressing our luck a little bit here. They started demolishing my master bathroom today. I've had a leak for like 3 months. Just a massive undertaking and a massive amount out of my wallet. So hopefully the podcast or hopefully the takes I have on this podcast are going to help pay me back in best ball later this year. Let's put it that way.
There's always that like universal thing where if like you are giving a take on an upside guy and then all of a sudden we hear like maybe that'll be like a warning sign that maybe that's not the guy we want. We'll take that.
Yeah, we'll
either
see.
way. Yeah, we'll go in either one. Pat, getting and locking in these upside players, did you find it difficult? Because we're going to be going through kind of the gambit of higher end upside guys. We're going to get some deep plays. This almost toes the line of the like, what's a sleeper and what's a breakout and what's an upside. What is your just real quick approach when you were tackling these massive upside players that we're going to talk about?
I mean, there are a few guys I've kind of felt this way about for the entirety of the offseason. And a few of these guys have kind of evolved into sort of new favorites of mine where just the last month or so I've had kind of a rethink on these guys and maybe like them a little more or a lot more than I did 2 months ago.
So we might have lost some upside over the last 48 hours in a big trade that happened in football where Jonnu Smith, who, upside play, whatever, huge season, but his new destination with the Pittsburgh Steelers has really chopped off, at least most of us think, a ton of his fantasy value. Well, the Dolphins are out there in the market looking for a tight end. We've all started to speculate who could they bring in because there's a potential upside. If you look at what Jonnu did in the Dolphins offense, who could come in? Who could bring that big upside? Well, ladies and gentlemen, apparently it's Darren Waller. And we got that weird trade that just went down. Just as we're recording this, Darren Waller, coming out of retirement and being traded by the Giants, is the tight end that goes to the Dolphins. So a weird place to bring this in, talking about Darren Waller of all guys with upside. But just to touch on it, because this is fresh and new, there's going to be the big positive takes and the big negative takes. Mr. Joe Dolan, let's start with you. Is there any actual fantasy relevance? Is there any upside? I'm not talking massive upside. Is there any upside with Darren Waller returning and coming back with someone that he had worked with a couple years where he had been very fantasy relevant, going to this Dolphins offense? Is there any smoke to this fire?
Well, my first thought when this trade broke was he foolishly fumbled the Kelsey Plum bag with their divorce and needs some money. That's why he's coming back. There was a clip that Graham Barfield from Fantasy Points was throwing around on Twitter, essentially of Darren Waller saying that he knew he was going to retire in October of 2023 because the Giants had him run blocking and lining up at fullback. Maybe a year off has helped his body. Obviously, he's had a lot of injuries, but I just do not see anything that's going to appeal to me here. It feels like to me, and Pat, and you guys can say this if you disagree, it just feels like to me that this is going to be a guy in Darren Waller who other people are going to click in your draft, and they're going to think that they're pulling a fast one on the entire draft. And ultimately, I just don't think it's going to matter. We ran our projections at Fantasy Points immediately after the trade, and he came out as tight end 33. That's somebody who is barely draftable in a best ball 18 round, kind of underdog style draft. Your tight end premiums like FFPC, sure, take a shot. I put in some claims in my dynasty leagues as well because the high end outcome is maybe he produces in the first half of the season and I can flip him for an asset. I'm just not expecting that to happen.
Pat, our resident sicko, Andrew Erickson, put out a poll right as this happened and said, who would you rather this season, Darren Waller or Kyle Pitts? What do you say, Pat? Where are you at on the Darren Waller stuff, and how sick is it to click Kyle Pitts as picking someone over another tight end?
I mean, I have not totally quit on Kyle Pitts just yet because he had his last decent season more recently than Darren Waller did. like this Darren Waller thing to me feels a lot like the Josh Gordon thing, where people were like chasing the ghost for 5 years after his best season, or like his last really good season. Darren Waller's last really good season was, I believe, 2020. So now he's 33. I don't know where he's going to rank in that target pecking order in Miami, obviously behind Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, possibly Malik Washington or Nick Westbrook-Akine also. So I'm just like not interested in going there. When I plugged him into the rankings this morning, I think it was at tight end 40. So I'm kind of glad to hear that Joe and the Fantasy Points guys are in the same general ballpark. I think I had him between like Tyler Higbee and Ben Sinnott.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that when we were going through the projections, Chris Wecht, who runs the projections for us, initially had him tight end 40. So it's funny you mentioned that. And he bumped up his value a little bit just to be like, all right, let's say if this does work out on some level and we still only got him to tight end 33. Look, here's the thing. I know absence makes the heart grow fonder, but I was out on Darren Waller when he was traded to the Giants 2 years ago. Why would I be in on him now, with the exception that he's just significantly cheaper or is perceived to be significantly cheaper?
Yeah, and I'd say, ask yourself, would you rather draft Darren Waller or put one of his rap songs on a loop on YouTube for 1 hour? Which decision? And when you say the rap song, I think that tells you.
Can I use getting my toenails pulled out?
You can if you want. I mean, still going to take that over Waller, so that's where we're at here. But you guys can decide in the comments below, are you drafting Darren Waller this season? Are you going to jump into that pool? It's making Kyle Pitts seem a lot better. All right, we're going to talk about real upside. That's fake upside. We've got real upside, 12 players with massive upside, and we are going to be kind of covering the gambit of different spots, as I mentioned. We've got a couple players in each. Each one of these fine gentlemen have picked 6, so we've got 12 total. And if you guys want to check out the ranks that we'll be referring to, you can go to fantasypros.com/ranks, and you can check out, we're using half PPR on this one. You can check out all the great stuff that we've got on the ranks, from full to superflex to dynasty to half to standard. Those are the references with all of the amazing rankers out there creating the expert consensus ranks. Gentlemen, let's jump into this. We are starting. These are our early ceiling picks, top 75 overall. You each have got 2 players that we're going to be talking about. Joe, we are going to start with you. Massive, massive upside on whom? Which player are you picking for the first massive upside?
And so I don't want this to become a Dolphin-centric show, because I actually could have gone with 2 Dolphins here. And I also don't want this to misrepresent my actual feelings of the Miami Dolphins this year. I don't know what their plan is. I locked in a 5-unit bet under 8.5 wins a couple of months ago, and I'm more thrilled about that after this series of trades. But I really like Devon Achane, I gotta tell you. He is the expert consensus RB6. He's going in the second round. But with Jonnu Smith gone, I think there's massive upside for Achane in the passing game. One of the things that we chart at Fantasy Points Data is designed targets. Devon Achane was one of the leaders in the NFL in design targets last year. Before Jonnu Smith had a significant role in the offense last year, he basically garnered 40% of the Dolphins' targets behind the line of scrimmage. So we have Devon Achane, who had a massive role in the passing game last year on design targets. Now with a design target hound in Jonnu Smith gone, Devon Achane had 36 targets designed specifically for him last year. That was 42.4% of his targets. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes over 40 design targets this year. He is going to be a screen master. And in the second round of drafts, especially if I get a running back in the first, Devon Achane's an easy click for me.
And Pat, one thing I really love too is, like, as mentioned here, with with Jonnu Smith leaving, we've seen, and a lot of people are putting it out here, you've seen the usage numbers. The usage numbers pop when Jonnu is out, and Devon Achane being like a 22% target share, I believe was the number that I saw with Jonnu out. It's huge. He comes in at ECR 6 as far as running backs and half point PPR. Do you think you're going to be, I don't know where you have him relative to this, but I'm curious about the massive upside that Joe just mentioned, just as a quick take here. And do you think that we're going to see him move up in rank a little bit as rankers start to put updates in because of Jonnu being gone?
I think we will. I moved him up a spot, I think, in my ranks after the Jonnu trade, and I don't know if I moved him up far enough. And so I, too, am confused about the Miami offense and what it's going to look like this year. And I, too, bet the under on Miami's win total. Glad to hear Joe was on that. I, tried to talk my wife into, just shoving in the whole college fund. I'm so confident in that one. But, what I want to see is if Miami returns the verticality to their passing game, because Tua Tagovailoa averaged 5.7 intended air yards per pass attempt last year. He was at 9.5 2 years ago. And is that going to come back? Like, they had this Tua preservation plan in place after he came back from his concussion last year, where so many of the throws were going to Jonnu and Achane behind close to the line of scrimmage. I'd like to think they're going to bring some of the verticality back, and there's going to be more for Tyreek and Jalen Waddle this year. But at the same time, if it's really only Achane getting those near the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage targets, and not Jonnu anymore, that is a big boost for Achane's value.
And want to mention as well, Joe talked about some of the great stuff over at Fantasy Points. We love Fantasy Points over here at Fantasy Pros, so make sure you check out, because it is incredible the stuff they've got. But Mr. Joe Dolan also does a ton on the podcast radio side, and we were talking beforehand. I forgot to mention this a little bit ago here, but Joe, isn't there a little bit of breaking news on the on the radio side?
So I'm not 100% certain when this podcast is being released, but by the time you listen to it, you might actually already have an opportunity to go click on your SiriusXM app, and Fantasy Football Morning presented by Fantasy Points will be back on Monday, July 7th from 7 to 8 a.m. I know the people were sad to see us go after the Super Bowl. Well, they brought us back. So not only will I be hosting on the weekends with Paul Kelly, or at least that's in the plan, on Sundays during the NFL slate, but also myself, Paul Kelly, Tom Brawley will be back Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, which is SiriusXM Channel 87. So I hope y'all tune in. It's coming back, and that means football season's here, guys.
That's massive, and a perfect, just move from Devon Achane and the massive upside to the massive upside of what you guys are going to provide over at SiriusXM in that show. All right, let's jump into number 2 on the list. This is Pat Fitzmaurice's first player, and this is a wide receiver. I think you and I have talked about some, but you think there is a lot more upside versus his wide receiver 13 ECR.
Yeah, it's T. Higgins, and I had kind of a T. Higgins epiphany a few weeks ago when I was sprucing up my wide receiver rankings. It just sort of dawned on me that there are very few receivers with the sort of upside Higgins has. He's currently wide receiver 13, as you just mentioned, Welsh 29 overall. I had him ranked as sort of a mid-range wide receiver 2 for most of the offseason, but now I've got him ranked as a low-end wide receiver 1. He's my wide receiver 12, number 24 overall. I think the hesitation some people have with Higgins is two-pronged. One, they don't like spending such an early pick on someone who isn't even the top receiver on his own team. Obviously, on the Bengals, that honor belongs to Jamar Chase. 2, Higgins has missed 5 games each of the last 2 years. He's had some hamstring issues over his career. But here's why T. Higgins has such vast upside and why I think you should proactively draft him. The Cincinnati passing game is a machine. Like, the lowest yardage total for Joe Burrow in any of his full seasons is 4,475 yards. Fewest passing touchdowns for Joe Burrow in any full season, 34. Now consider that the Bengals defense is going to be just wretched this year. The one spot where Cincinnati might have above average defensive personnel is on the edge, but the Bengals somehow find a way to repel their most talented defensive players. They've got these contract standoffs with Trey Hendrickson, their star pass rusher, Shamar Stewart, the pass rusher they drafted in the first round. The Bengals basically bumble through their relationships with edge rushers the way I bumbled through my relationships with girls in high school and college. So the Bengals are probably going to have to win games 38-35 this year. Like, they're going to be in shootouts on a weekly basis. If I see a Bengals game with a Vegas total below 50, I am auto betting the over. Like, I fully expect Joe Burrow to be top 3 in pass attempts. And I hope I don't have to sell anyone on T. Higgins being good at football, like 9 yards per target for his career, almost 2 yards per route run, 10 touchdowns in 12 games last year. Like, I won't waste any more time making that case. The people consuming this show actually watch football. So, and one last point, a healthy T. Higgins is going to put up big numbers this season, even with Jamar Chase around. But if Chase were to miss any time, over the last 3 years, in the 5 games Jamar Chase has missed, T. Higgins has had 31 catches for 511 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's 20 PPR points per game. So let me ask the two of you. Are you taking Ladd McConkey over T. Higgins this year? Like right now, I have Ladd ranked just ahead of T, but I'm starting to wonder if T might not be the better pick.
I'm taking McConkey. I really like McConkey. I think he's a borderline first rounder. He's kind of in the Brian Thomas, Drake London pocket for me. But I'm kind of with you, Pat, and I don't want to step on Welsh's toes here. We have Joe Burrow projected to lead the NFL in pass attempts at fantasy points. And Joe Burrow is, what do we love about him? He throws the ball to his good receivers. You know, he's not Sean Payton getting little Jordan Humphrey involved. You know, he is throwing the ball to Higgins. He's throwing the ball to Chase, and occasionally Gesicki and Yoshivas every now and again will make a big play. But no, I like Higgins in the back end of the second, early third round. He's my most clicked receiver in that range. But I do still have him behind McConkey.
I do. I'm a crybaby if I don't get McConkey like in the second round. I just cry. I did it in the mock. I cry about it. I love McConkey's route running ability. I think he's going to get all the targets. He showed off some deep play stuff. The T. Higgins thing is really interesting because that was kind of what I was asked. I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but like you brought up the first thing I think that a lot of people ask about, and then we kind of glossed over it. It's like, can a number 2 on a team have massive upside when there is someone blocking, regardless of how much the team throws? It's not to say, can he be good? Like, we know he can be good. He's massively talented. But can he have the huge upside where he can keep going further? And I think that's kind of open for debate. I will say that, it's interesting. His final 8 games, he had 8 touchdowns over those 8 games. He did have 3 and 1. 12 games played. He had 6 times where he had 10 targets or more. I mean, that's what you're looking for. So I guess just the only thing I want to throw out, even though, you praised him a little bit, Joe, is like, do you think a number 2 at the end of the day, not can be good and not can be massively valuable, but do you think he can have the upside to jump over number 1s? We threw out Ladd. You want Ladd over him, but you start to throw out those other names that T. Higgins, I think, is already priced, I think, at a really appropriate range. Can he jump London? Yeah. Can he jump Nico Collins? Can he jump Amon-Ra St. Brown? Can that happen with a number 2?
Well, I mean, I think it's a viable question, right? I think that's why he's priced where he is, but I have all of those guys ranked ahead of him because they are number 1s. But again, not all number 2s are created equal, not just in terms of talent, which T. Higgins has, where he might be the number 1 on half the teams in the NFL at this point, but also opportunity. Again, Pat hit on all the defensive issues for the Bengals. We have Joe Burrow projected to lead the NFL in pass attempts. So if the Chargers play big, dumb Jim Harbaugh football, the way Jim Harbaugh wants to run the football, they drafted Marion Hampton in the first round. They eschewed offensive playmakers in last year's draft to take Joe Alt. So obviously this is a team that is built a certain way. And would I be shocked if T. Higgins as a number 2 has more production than Ladd McConkey as a number 1? No, I wouldn't. Drake London, we have a good sample of him, a small sample, but a good sample of him with Michael Penix. Well, what if Michael Penix's small sample, not to make a phallic joke here, but what if his small sample is really small and it ends up being kind of fool's gold? So there are some questions there. We know what Joe Burrow and T. Higgins can do.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Joe's point there, that would be my possible case for T. Higgins. And again, right now I still have Ladd ahead of T. Higgins. But there's no question Ladd is going to have a bigger target share percentage than T. Higgins will. But it's just the percentage of what size pie. With T. Higgins, I think we're talking about a big Costco-sized pie that can feed a family of 10. And with, Ladd McConkey and the way they want to run it, might be like one of those McDonald's hot apple pies you get in a little sleeve. So...
Got a lot of innuendo here and a lot of examples. I like it. All right, we got one more each from these guys in this kind of like higher tier, but we have been talking about giveaways. We've always got the giveaways for you guys. We're actually going to announce a winner in a brand new giveaway. So we've had the George Pickens Steeler jersey giveaway. It is time to announce the winner of said jersey is Huff in Puff 2025. Yes, Huff-in-Puff 2025. So my friend, please get in touch with our customer support agents at mailbag@fantasypros.com with your mailing address and proof of your subscription to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel, and we will get that shipped out to you. Again, the winner, Huff and Puff 2025. Congratulations. But we ain't done. We got a new one. So this month, now in July, if you want a chance to win a signed James Cook Bills jersey for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com, all you've got to do, just like Huff and Puff 2025 did, subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any video, by the way, and that's it. We'll be announcing a winner just like we did right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on notifications so you know when new videos are up and you can claim your prize, that James Cook autographed Bills jersey. Very awesome. All right, player number 3, massive upside. We are going back to the wide receivers. This is ECR wide receiver 19 according to Fantasy Pros and half PPR. Mr. Joe Dolan, who is your massive upside player?
It's Rashee Rice. And look, he was a guy we were pounding the table for at fantasy points last year because the evidence at that point showed that Rashee Rice wasn't going to be suspended for 2024. A lot of that coming from my friend Drew Davenport, who also does phenomenal work as a lawyer, and he's always analyzing these NFL legal situations. Part of our job that we wish we didn't have to do, but unfortunately we do. And his analysis is, it looks like at this point, Rashee Rice's criminal case is going to be pushed to the end of the 2025 season, if not into 2026. And the NFL is not going to suspend him until we get answers from that case. And now, if Rashee Rice is coming back from that injury, a serious injury, he would have been, honestly, one of the, if not the league-winning pick last year if he didn't get hurt. Now, the injury is a big deal. There's no doubt about that. But in 13 games in his career, in which he's played or run a route on 60% or more of the Chiefs' passing plays, he is the equivalent of wide receiver 12. You're already getting a discount in ADP. You're getting a discount in expert consensus ranking. I think he's got an opportunity to finish as a real wide receiver 1 with Patrick Mahomes this year. And I think that Chiefs offense is going to be more explosive this year than it has been in recent years. I think he's got a huge opportunity here to buck the trend. Ever since Patrick Mahomes has taken over as starter, and I think even before then, it's like a 10-year run of either Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill leading the Chiefs in targets. I think that changes this year. I think Rashee Rice gets it done.
And it's really weird because the team, the volume kind of moves around and they get to a lot of players. And the only reason I'm bringing this up because I think Rashee Rice kind of bucks that trend. Like, he is that new volume player. But what did we do all season, Pat? We talked about Xavier Worthy in the Rashee Rice role. So Xavier Worthy maybe kind of opens this up. Do you think Worthy at all caps some of this, or do you think Rashee Rice can just jump back into that role that we've seen before, which is probably going to be a higher end wide receiver 1 if he gets that type of volume? Or do you think Worthy maybe caps him a tiny bit?
I've wrestled with this. So when Worthy was smashing late last year, and smashing, I mean, he had 50 catches over the Chiefs' last 8 games, playoffs included. So that's a 100-catch pace. But yes, that was because he was into that Rashee Rice role, which no doubt Rashee Rice is going to have back now. And it's going to be Xavier Worthy running routes deeper downfield. But he's going to get targeted on some of those routes. Like, Xavier Worthy has shown he's pretty good. So I do feel like we're not going to get the same Rashee Rice who was just crushing it and was the wide receiver 1 or 2 in PPR scoring through 3 weeks last year. Like, I don't think he's getting that sort of target volume now that the Xavier Worthy genie is out of the bottle. But I do still feel like Rice is going to be really impactful. So I just don't know where. And, if he, a lot of people are talking him up and he's going to go in the second round of some drafts. And I don't know if I want him in the second round, but I do want some Rashee Rice exposure this year. So it's going to be kind of a hard tightrope for me to walk.
I definitely want some exposure to Rashee Rice because if we do get that volume back, I mean, 9 targets in 2 of the first 3 games last season. First, give me some first catch bets on a first drive to Rashee Rice. Just get him the ball. And I like 7 to 8 catches per game. I actually really like this play, but I think Worthy is somebody that is floating out there that is going to make some people think. All right, player number 4, we're going back to running backs. We've got ECR RB 15 for you, Pat. Who's your upside play?
It's Kenneth Walker III, and his ECR 41st overall. I think that ranking sort of factors in what most people would consider to be a higher than average injury risk for Kenneth Walker. He missed 6 games last year. He missed 2 games the year before that. I have Walker ranked RB 14, 36 overall, so I'm not way above consensus, but I don't know. Right now, I have Kenneth Walker ranked right below Breece Hall, a fellow member of that 2022 draft class, and I'm wondering if I should maybe have Walker ranked higher. So what is it that has to go right for Kenneth Walker to return a nice profit on his mid 4th round cost? Obviously, stay healthy, give us 16 or 17 games. If he does that, I think he's going to finish as a top 12 running back. And it's great that we have Joe here, because I'm going to spotlight some of the great work that people can find at Joe's Outfit, Fantasy Points. Joe's colleague, Ryan Heath, wrote a really insightful article last month on rushing scheme fits. And Ryan pointed out that the Seahawks are switching to primarily an outside zone running scheme under new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. And Kenneth Walker has thrived on outside zone runs throughout his career. He averages 4.54 yards per carry on such runs, which is 13% better than he averages on other types of runs. And in addition to Clint Kubiak, the Seahawks also hired Rick Dennison as their running game coordinator. Dennison used to work with Clint Kubiak's dad, Gary, in Denver back in the 90s and 2000s. And the Broncos had some incredible rushing seasons back then with Terrell Davis and Clinton Portis. Yes, those guys were great backs, but the Broncos also got big rushing seasons out of dudes like Reuben Drones, Mike Anderson, Tatum Bell, back when Gary Kubiak and Rick Dennison were working together. So, and when Clint Kubiak was the Vikings OC in 2021, Dalvin Cook had almost 1,200 rushing yards in 13 games. The scheme just works. So Walker is getting plugged into a historically successful scheme that really fits what he does best, get to the edge and make people miss. And oh, by the way, Walker also turned into a pretty prolific pass catcher last season with a career high 46 catches in only 11 games. So yeah, I think Walker is big time upside this year.
It's a really compelling argument too, just because I think Walker has fallen for a lot of people in just to this territory of like disinterest, because like Charbonnet is there, but this idea of more outside zone running, that literally plays to Ken Walker. So what do you think about this one, Joe?
Well, he already took all the Fantasy Points data stuff that I was going to reference. So let me build on a point that Pat made there. At his improvement as a receiver, did you know that Kenneth Walker was 5th in target share among running backs last year? Wow. The only guys who were ahead of him were Alvin Kamara, all right, Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane, who we just talked about, clearly, and Breece Hall. Those are the only 4 running backs ahead of him in target share last year. So I see a potential bell cow profile getting drafted in like the 5th, 6th round. He is my most drafted running back on Underdog. He is going to continue to be my most drafted running back on Underdog. He could be your number 1 if you go wide receiver heavy early and have kind of a modified-ish 0 RB. I know there's a big debate about what actually constitutes 0 RB, but I think he could be a borderline hero RB that you can get for borderline 0 RB price. I love Kenneth Walker this year. This is the only one, by the way. Pat sent the names that he was considering before the podcast. He said, if there's any overlap, let me know. This was the guy I was going to have, so I pivoted a little bit to Rashee Rice, but I love this Kenneth Walker one. I'm really in on it.
I stole from Joe, but I have to send Ryan Heath a royalty check for that little rant.
That's the trade-off.
Fun fact in this as well, Ken Walker in full PPR is also 15 at RB, so there's no bump up, so maybe even a little bit more value. When we're talking about target share in the passing game, there might be even more upside, massive upside in full. We're looking at half PPR when we're doing this, but just a full look here. Before we jump into the next territory where we're talking about mid-round massive upside breakouts, let's talk about our friends over at DraftKings, because nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching baseball, especially for me. And the simplest way to get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. No gimmicks, no weird rules, just ball. Nail your picks and you're heating up. Pick 6 brings upside with payouts up to 500 times. Pick Six is live in a ton of states as well, like Texas, California, Georgia, Missouri, and a lot more. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick Six right now. New customers can take advantage of a special sign-up offer. Pick Six from DraftKings is the most fun way to play fantasy sports, so download the DraftKings Pick Six app now and use that offer code FANTASYPROS. That's code FANTASYPROS for new customers to get a special sign-up offer, better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick Six from DraftKings. The crown is yours. We are going to player number 5 now, moving to our mid-breakout. So we're kind of moving down the ECR ranks here on the overall. And Joe, we're going to start with you. You've got a wide receiver. He is ECR wide receiver 35. Hit us with him.
Yeah, so this was like a breakout category, but apparently the experts and ADP expects this guy to break back in. Because Jordan Addison is way underpriced to me. Over the last 2 combined seasons, in half PPR on Underdog, he's the wide receiver 20. He's wide receiver 35 by expert consensus ranking. And look, obviously the concern is that JJ McCarthy isn't good. Well, what did we know before last season? We knew Sam Darnold wasn't good, or at least that's what we thought we knew. And then Jordan Addison comes out and has a fantastic year. Kevin O'Connell seems to be a quarterback whisperer. We've got great seasons from Jordan Addison with both Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold. We have great seasons or great games from him with the likes of Nick Mullins. You know, you remember Nick Mullins just airing the ball. It looks like he's throwing a water balloon out there. You know, like it's just barely moving, and he's throwing for 400 yards. I just think this Kevin O'Connell offense is so well designed that it's essentially quarterback proof. It is the offense I would pick to go into if I were a quarterback trying to recoup my value on the free agent market. I think JJ McCarthy is set up very well, and I just think Jordan Addison is way too underpriced. 35th in the ranking for a guy who's been the 20th wide receiver over the last 2 years. Easy click for me, and an easy stack with JJ McCarthy.
You know, it kind of reminds me of, you know, that conversation we'll have where you see like 2 wide receivers, like wide receivers ranked 18 and a wide receiver ranked 23, but then the quarterback is like ranked 25, and we're like, hey, by the way, how does the quarterback value not kind of match up with there? There's a similar thing going on where most people are talking about Justin Jefferson, and he's number 2 overall player, number 2 wide receiver, maybe in some respects, number 1. We're going to be okay. But Jordan Addison is not getting that same respect. It's only Justin Jefferson right now. And it's a really compelling argument that Joe's making as far as the rank goes. And we're giving the benefit of the doubt to Jefferson, but we're not at all to Jordan Addison.
You know, Addison can step back significantly and still be worth his ADP. So like when you consider that, like he can have the worst season of his career and still pay off this ADP. So I agree with you. And that's why JJ McCarthy, additionally, if you want to just throw a little extra analysis in here, is going to be one of my most drafted quarterbacks because he also has the benefit of being able to run.
Pat, do you have any take on the Jordan Addison, like kind of bringing up that same thing where it's like Justin Jefferson is, I mean, I guess you could also argue like he's a little quarterback proof, but you see a pretty big gap between those guys from what he was scoring to where he's sitting now under JJ McCarthy, and just it really there's a little bit of oddness to it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar to the T. Higgins thing where people do sort of have this aversion to taking the number 2s in an offense where the number 1 is a great receiver, but like Jordan Addison is phenomenal in his own right, like a first-round pick. And I know like his final college season when he transferred to USC wasn't great, but as a sophomore at Pitt, I had to look this up while Joe was talking. 100 catches, 14 games for Addison as a sophomore at Pitt. 100 catches, 1,583 yards, 17 touchdowns. Like this guy was a college star. And like, he has continued to produce at the NFL level, and I have no doubt he'll eventually get decoupled from Justin Jefferson and be an alpha receiver somewhere else, where like he's going to be a number 1 at some point, but still he can give you good numbers as a number 2 receiver.
Well, we're going to stick with receivers. This is number 6 on the upside players that you've got to target. Wide receiver ECR 43 for you, Pat. Let's hear it.
Stefon Diggs, and I've got him at wide receiver 37. The overall is where there's a bigger difference. I think in ECR, he's 101 overall. I've got him at 79. And I guess there's a recurring theme with the first few guys on my high upside list. They're all perceived injury risks. So Diggs is obviously coming off the torn ACL, but Dr. Deepak Chona, friend of the show and a well-regarded injury expert, he thinks there's a 2/3 chance that Diggs is going to be good to go for week 1. and he thinks Diggs will be at 90% of full capacity about a month into the season. So full capacity Stefon Diggs has been pretty amazing. Like 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons before he got hurt midway through 2024. 4 straight 100-catch seasons before last year. An average of just under 10 touchdowns per season over the last 3 years up until 2024. If we get 90% of that sort of production, and we can get it in the 9th round of drafts, like, sign me up.
Especially, the 9th round, that's a big important thing. You could take him as your 4th or 5th receiver potentially off the board and could end up working by week 6 as your wide receiver 2 or 3. There's some inherent risk with the injury. Does that shy you away from there being a lot of upside, Joe, or are you all in on this?
Yeah, I haven't really clicked Stefon Diggs' name a whole lot. My favorite Patriot receiver to draft has actually been Hunter Henry, the tight end. But this is one where maybe I need to see through my own biases here because the Patriots receivers have screwed us for so long since Brady left. But if Drake Maye takes the leap that we're expecting, somebody's going to have to come through, right? And I guess other people have said Kyle Williams is that guy. Demario Douglas, my guy Andrew Callahan in the Boston Herald says Kyle Williams at this point is way behind Demario Douglas on the food chain. So are there other names out there besides Stefon Diggs? I mean, I could see Pat's point here. He just hasn't been a name I've been terribly excited to draft to this point.
All right, let's move to number 7. These are the last 2 in this mid-territory. This is actually one of my favorites on this list. This is a guy that I'm trying to click as much as possible because of the equity and the upside, and it kind of lives in a similar Jordan Addison type of world. So, Mr. Joe Dolan, ECR wide receiver, 49.5 PPR. Let's talk about your guy.
So there is a receiver who's going at the 1-2 turn who averaged just basically 6 yards per receiving per game more than his own teammate who is going at essentially round 10, round 11. The first receiver is Drake London. The second is Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney averaged 62 yards per game last year in games that Drake London played. London averaged just 67.8 in that same time frame. So we're really expecting Drake London to take a huge leap forward with Michael Penix, what he showed at the end of last year, and Darnell Mooney, who was the wide receiver 35 last year, to take a significant step backwards. And I'm not sure that should be the case. I actually like both of these guys. London at the 1-2 turn. Well, I've been preferring Brian Thomas and Nico Collins, but I see why people like Drake London there. But I just think Darnell Mooney's too cheap. And because of that cost, I have been drafting him a lot. You mentioned wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. Man, if he's my wide receiver 5 in a best ball draft, guys, I might just eschew wide receiver until the last 2 or 3 rounds and take some dart throws because I feel like I'm going to have a really good foundation there.
So, Pat, we didn't see Darnell Mooney get some of that target share early on once Penix was there, like, he was getting before, but we've just seen huge big play ability. We saw some early touchdown equity, and if this team is going to be comfortable with throwing the ball more and getting the ball in the air, obviously Bijan and Drake London are going to get their targets. And I guess you're kind of a Kyle Pitts guy, but it seems like a foregone conclusion that Darnell Mooney is going to have like that sneaky wide receiver 3 upside here. And he's going as like a wide receiver 5, but that's a little bit of my take. What do you think on Darnell Mooney?
It's a skinny target tree in Atlanta. So, and there is room for London, Pitts, and Mooney to all return a profit, I think, at their current prices. And if you hate Pitts, like a lot of people do, then you should really like Mooney. I think what I like most about Mooney, he had a 92.9% snap share last year. Like, he is on the field all the time. And, like, who have the Falcons added at wide receiver in the offseason? It's going to be like Ray McLeod as the number 3 again, maybe Nick Nash, an undrafted free agent who I kind of like, but he's not going to threaten Mooney's snap share. And, like, I really like Penix, and Penix is great at throwing to the boundaries. Like, he is already above average compared to all other starting quarterbacks at throwing outside. And, like, that's where Mooney does some of his best work. So, yes, I love this call.
So you are going to be pairing as we move into player number 8. We're just before we get to our deep shots. Pat, you're going to be pairing your Stefon Diggs with a quarterback. This is, I think, our first quarterback that's in play here. You think there's massive upside with Drake Maye. I'm stealing it a little bit because I kind of already gave that away, but QB 16, pretty low on the list. You think, and we've done a show or two before where you've talked kind of about Drake Maye, but you think there's massive upside at QB 16 with Drake Maye.
Yes, I'm going for the Patriots stack here. I've been beating the Drake Maye drum like John Bonham all off season. And look, I know that some of our viewers and listeners are just coming out of their fantasy hibernations. A lot of people don't really come out of their caves for fantasy until right around the 4th of July. So for those people, I want to reiterate the case for Drake Maye and why I consider him to have such vast upside. I have him at QB 8, and that is really aggressive, but the quarterbacks with sky-high fantasy upside are almost always the guys who run. So the thing is that most of the running quarterbacks are really expensive. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. I think Drake Maye might have as much or almost as much rushing upside as those guys have, and you can get him so much cheaper. Like Maye started 12 games as a rookie, but if we exclude week 18 when he only played one series before he was pulled, Maye averaged 38.3 rushing yards a game. Over a full season, that projects to 651 rushing yards. I think Maye could get to 800 rushing yards based on how aggressively he ran in college. So as a sophomore at North Carolina, Maye had 698 rushing yards in 14 games. And let's not forget that college quarterbacks have their sack yardage deducted from their rushing yardage. Maye lost about 200 yards in sacks that year, so he was really closer to 850 rushing yards in 14 games. Maye had only 2 rushing touchdowns last year. In 2 seasons as a college starter, he had 16 runs for touchdowns in 26 games. I just think there's big-time rushing upside with Drake Maye, and he was surprisingly good as a passer last year despite having a terrible offensive line and terrible wide receivers. The Patriots have upgraded both of those areas in the offseason. So I think Drake Maye is going to give us a QB1 fantasy finish this year.
Joe, it's interesting that there's like a quarterback. Everybody's got a quarterback that's inside the top 10 that is a running guy. If it's not Drake Maye, Justin Fields is the popular one. ECR quarterback 15. Caleb Williams would be another one of those that he's QB 12. We've seen some in the top 10. I'm not surprised that Pat did this. Pat, you are the highest ranker in the world on ECR of Drake Maye. You are number 1 in the rankings, but there are people that are behind you. What do you think about Drake Maye, Joe? And what do you also think about making that bet on any of these running quarterbacks? Like if you're not a big Maye guy, have you translated or moved it to maybe Justin Fields is your guy or one of these guys with high rushing equity?
I've had my fair share of a good bit of these guys. Maye has just been one of those guys I'm in on, but I haven't really had the opportunity to click his name as much as I would like. JJ McCarthy, as I had mentioned, has been more that kind of rushing upside middle round guy. But here's another reason for optimism. Pat mentioned his legs, but I have numbers on that. So let's look at Drake Maye. In his games last year, he was second to only Jaden Daniels. He was even ahead of Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson in rushing yards on scrambles per game. So meaning non-designed rush attempts. He was at 31.3 rushing yards per game on scrambles. He had virtually no role as a designed runner. We had him charted as averaging 0.1 fantasy points per game on designed runs. Essentially 1 yard per game on design runs when he played. That is minuscule. I already mentioned my friend Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald. I talked to him last week. He told me designed runs are going to be a part of what the Patriots do with Drake Maye. There's significant untapped potential there.
Huge. So huge upside potential there, especially as people are going to be pushing up guys. Like, again, I'm coming back to Justin Fields. You know, our boy Debro loves Justin Fields. He gets pushed up into the top 10 as season goes on. That's where even more value starts to be created with a guy like Drake Maye, where others are starting to get that push. And those quarterbacks I mentioned all had higher ECRs than Drake Maye. So I like it a lot. All right, we are now into our deep shots. These are kind of league winning plays because they're so far out. We love the upside here. And number 9 on the list, Joe, you've picked a tight end, ECR 21. This guy is currently, so let's hear it.
It's Isaiah Likely. And look, we just saw Mark Andrews come off a really inconsistent season. Yes, he had 11 touchdown receptions, but everybody's going to remember what happened in the playoffs, with the drop on the 2-point conversion. He had some fumbles. He had some drops during the regular season. And we have a really interesting comment from John Harbaugh this offseason. Here it is. This is from Pro Football Talk, which is probably aggregating it from somewhere else, but nonetheless, Harbaugh, I want to see him beat an All-Pro on Isaiah Likely. That'd be my goal for him. He's capable of it. Now, look, how many tight ends getting drafted around tight end 21 have their coach saying they're capable of being an All-Pro? Maybe some lip service for some of the rookies like a Mason Taylor or a Terrence Ferguson, but not somebody like Isaiah Likely who we have seen flash that potential. Remember, he had the 9 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown in the opener last year. Again, and then, of course, was a massive waiver wire pickup and then didn't really do anything the rest of the season. But what if that potential shows up a little bit more? And then you get the advantage of Isaiah Likely in this offense with a 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson. Maybe you got Mark Andrews taking a step back as he ages. There still isn't the alpha number 1 receiver here. I like Rashad Bateman a lot. I actually like Zay Flowers a lot at cost this year simply because they're cheap. But I like Likely at his price way more than I like Mark Andrews. And I could see him taking a step forward into being a 60-catch tight end who, if you can get him in the last round of your draft and you get a weekly starter out of that position, I'm going to take the gamble that Mark Andrews maybe takes a little bit of a step back. Give me Isaiah Likely at his price.
This is the tight end that you go with, not like I'm sneaky and I'm going to take Darren Waller now because he's with the Dolphins. Go to Isaiah Likely with that huge upside.
And I think a lot of people, maybe I'm just underestimating the average fantasy player, but I think like people are going to be like, I'm going to take Darren Waller before Isaiah Likely now. I'm not doing that.
That's why I said it. I think you're going to start having comparisons of even Jonnu versus Waller. Like the Waller stuff is going to get pretty high up there. I jokingly kind of say it, but Pat, I know if you want to comment on the Waller versus Likely, but just overall, what do you think about taking Likely later in drafts?
Yeah, Likely by a mile. We just need to get Mark Andrews out of the way. Ryan Wormley and I were talking about this the other day because if you look at the games where Mark Andrews hasn't played, Likely's numbers in those games, like prorated, projected over a full season, work out to like 850 yards and 11 touchdowns. So yes, we just need to get Mark Andrews out of the way, and maybe there's room for Likely to be impactful even with Andrews there. But if there's some sort of role reduction or Andrews gets hurt, yeah, Likely could absolutely be a league-winning type guy.
Mark Andrews, pride of my high school, by the way. All right, we have gone this entire upside conversation without a rookie. How did we do it? How did we talk about massive upside? Part of the reason is because the rookie prices, they're not super friendly to upside sometimes. But this guy, you are saying, is Mr. Pat Fitzmaurice. Wide receiver ECR 53 is number 10 on the upside plays on our first rookie of the show.
Luther Burden. So I've got him wide receiver 50, but I've got him about a round and a half ahead of ECR overall. My question is, what if Luther Burden plays the Amon-Ra St. Brown role in Ben Johnson's offense? Like DJ Moore and Roma Dunze are going to be primarily outside, and I would hope that Luther Burden can beat out Olamide Zaccheaus for the slot role. Burden is he is so quick and explosive, absolutely electric after the catch, and he has surprisingly good contact balance for a smaller receiver. He didn't have a great season for Missouri last year, but that was largely because Missouri quarterback Brady Cook was hurt pretty much all year. Wasn't himself. When Burden was a 19-year-old sophomore, he had 83 catches, 1,200 yards, and 9 touchdowns in 13 games, playing in the toughest conference in the country, the SEC. If Luther Burden is the Bears' primary slot man and things start to click for Caleb Williams, like Burden could dramatically outkick his ADP.
Joe, do you think it's ifs and buts that require Luther Burden to be a big upside play, or do you think there's a floor for what this offense could create with those other wide receivers, that there's upside regardless, or do you think ifs and buts have to be involved?
I mean, I think there's upside regardless with him, but I will throw in an if and a but here. DJ Moore was just staggeringly productive on design targets last year, and that's notable because this is a new offensive staff. Do they design the same high percentage of targets? Do they open it up more? Obviously, I think a lot of that was the coaching staff last year needed to get easy throws out there for Caleb Williams. So does Ben Johnson, with developing Caleb Williams more, does he unlock DJ Moore to go downfield a little bit more, work outside the way Pat mentioned? And in a twist of irony, does that mean DJ Moore isn't as productive for fantasy? He's been a guy I haven't really been clicking his name. As good as I think DJ Moore is, I felt like he's a little bit overpriced, and I've been pivoting to somebody like Burden who might take some more of those design targets, as DJ Moore, as the veteran, they trust him to run more difficult routes.
Well, you're about to throw us the deepest of deep names on this list with upside. ECR wide receiver 82, number 11 on our list. Joe Dolan, this is your last one, so hit us with the deepest of deep upside names.
Now, everybody thinks the drafting, and I agree, the drafting of Pat Bryant out of Illinois signals that Sean Payton still loves that big slot receiver. Matter of fact, I think he brought up Marcus Colston's name and Michael Thomas's name when he talked about Pat Bryant. But what if Pat Bryant doesn't have that role right away? There's a second-year player out of Utah who I think might have that role from the offset. His name is Devaughn Vele. Now, here's the problem with Devaughn Vele. He's in his second year in the NFL, but he's going to be 28 this season. So even though he's in his second year, I'm not telling you this is some like great dynasty asset. And if he is, you might want to trade him as soon as he breaks out. But over the last 2 years, these are the only rookies we've charted as having a higher first downs per route run than Devaughn Vele from rookies. Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice, Ladd McConkey, Tank Dell, Dontavian Wicks, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas. All right, 5 of those names are going inside the first 2 rounds of fantasy drafts. One of them is not going to play this year in Tank Dell, and the other is Dontavian Wicks, who might be one of the best receivers in football if he could actually catch the ball, which he can't do. Devaughn Vele has great hands. He's been drawing absolute rave reviews from Broncos camp. Longtime beat writer Troy Rank this June. He said he's turning heads in OTAs, one of my least favorite phrases, but nonetheless, let's just give it. He says he appears poised for a breakout season. Cody Rourke, who covers the Broncos for Mile High Report. Devaughn Vele looks like he'll be a pillar player at wide receiver alongside Courtland Sutton. Noticeably more muscle mass to him this offseason compared to last year. And the key, he's free. He's an 18th round pick on Underdog. People are taking Pat Bryant ahead of him. I just think Devaughn Vele is poised to be the starting slot receiver for the Broncos. And I wouldn't be shocked if he has a Jawan Jennings-ish season for them.
Ooh, that just sparked me up with you. Pat, you knew as soon as you heard Jawan Jennings and me, I just got jumped up a little bit. I love Vele. The Broncos offense maddens me, though, because they're like a lower volume Chiefs where it's just they spread
Sean
the ball
Payton,
around.
man.
Yeah.
And you got to hit the cheap Sean Payton guy. Alvin Kamara was great when he was a rookie because he was like an 11th round pick. So I'm going to take the cheap Sean Payton guy because he's always out there trying to prove to you how smart he is.
Pat, what would be your strategy to a guy like Vele who's so low ranked? Is it watch early in? Is it you draft at the end of your draft? Is he a best ball only type of guy? Is he a guy to put on the radar as soon as the season goes? Like, how would you approach someone with ECR 80?
Well, in my typical 12-man league with 16 or 18 player rosters, he's probably on the speed dial for waiver wire. But I do play in some leagues that are like 16 teams, 20 rounds, where we draft everyone. And like Vele is an interesting dart throw back then because, I wonder about Pat Bryant. I mean, there are probably some offensive linemen in the NFL who run faster than Pat Bryant does. And Vele is a legit 4.47 guy, I want to say. Now, like Marvin Mims has kind of been my favorite under the radar Broncos pass catcher guy, but I'm also resigned to the possibility that Marvin Mims is just a designated gadget guy, punt returner.
Yeah, they're different receivers.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the thing with Vele. You mentioned Vele. Well, he was a 7th round pick last year. Well, the reason he was a 7th round pick is because he was 27 years old. If he was 22, he's probably a day 2 pick.
And Vele, I think, had bigger snap shares than Marvin Mims. Like Marvin Mims, even when he was like kicking butt at the end of last season and making all these big plays, he was getting snap shares under 50%. And I think Vele was probably over 50%. So
Vele definitely showed up a couple times on the Betting Pros prop show that Erickson and I did. I picked Vele a couple times. He was a fun player to get with those low usages. I mean, you're playing with fire a little bit.
Right. 13 and a half yards though, or some of those lines. And sometimes those are the right lines to target.
I know. Give me beginning of the season right now. Maybe that's a little betting marker. Give me a low line for Vele to start the season, and let's have Joe Dolan be right and just absolutely break out with Vele. All right, Pat, you're going to take us home with a former Bronco. Not someone I thought we'd see on this list, but hey, you know what? The usage is potentially going to be there. This is ECR RB 36, but low in the overall. Number 12 is who?
So it's Javonte Williams, and I am actually slightly behind ECR on Javonte. I have him RB 39, but I do want some exposure to Javonte this season because the upside case for him is pretty simple. Like, what if he still wasn't 100% last year after that gnarly knee injury in 2022, torn ACL, torn MCL, and he's finally 100% this year? Like, 2021 does seem like a long time ago, so it's easy to forget just how exciting Javonte Williams was as a rookie that year. 1,200 yards from scrimmage and 7 touchdowns, even though he was splitting work 50-50 with Melvin Gordon. And Javonte averaged almost 3.5 yards after contact per carry that season. He had 43 receptions. So pretty compelling stuff from him that year. He just wasn't the same guy in 2023 or 2024 post-injury. But Javonte is still only 25 years old, and it seems like he's going to get the first crack at being the lead guy for Dallas this year. So if we get the old Javonte, he could give people a pretty huge return on investment.
Real quick, guys, that he's coming from the school of Todd Gurley. He seems like Javonte Williams, the school of Todd Gurley, in that, he feels like he's 32 years old and he's only 25. But I thought this name was going to be Jaden Blue when I saw Cowboys running back in here for the upside, not Javonte Williams. So what do you think, Joe, about Javonte?
Oh, by the way, I actually believe Todd Gurley's younger than Derrick Henry, like in real life.
Wow.
Like, which is like, it's kind of amazing. I don't have really much to add to what Pat said, because obviously this could be a valuable role if Javonte Williams runs away with it. But the thing that sucks about Javonte Williams is that we have to talk about him like he's this scrub, but Pat brought it up. Remember the war crimes of Nathaniel Hackett when Melvin Gordon was fumbling every time he touched the ball and he still couldn't get Javonte Williams on the field? And then Javonte blew his knee out and they cut Gordon after that. Just like there is a world where Javonte Williams right now, an alternate universe where we're talking about him being drafted in like the Bijan Robinson range, And I don't know if, if I thought we were going to see that, I'd have a lot more Javonte Williams than I do now. But sometimes fate is just really cruel to these players.
It is hard to speak ill of Melvin Gordon. I mean, I'm wearing a Wisconsin Badger t-shirt here, but remember how anxious everyone was for Melvin Gordon to get the heck out of the way so Javonte could have that backfield to himself, and then gets hurt early the next season. It was very unfortunate.
The Broncos have a great history of Wisconsin running backs. Monty Ball. I was in on Monty Ball those years ago, man.
Number 1 overall, Monty Ball, you mean? Oh, we all remember. 12 draft picks with massive upside. Just running through them again. Devon Achane, T. Higgins, Rashee Rice, Ken Walker, Jordan Addison, Stefon Diggs, Darnell Mooney, Drake Maye, Isaiah Likely, Luther Burden, Devaughn Vele, and Javonte Williams. Those are your 12 that these guys have picked out that you got to be making sure you're locking into drafts. One of the best in the business, Joe Doyle, with one of the greatest places. I mean, Fantasy Points is an absolute staple of Fantasy Pros, owner and editor-in-chief, also SiriusXM. Why don't you, Joe, remind everybody again the new news on the SiriusXM show? Yeah,
SiriusXM Fantasy Football Morning presented by Fantasy Points will be back with myself and Paul Kelly Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 a.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, SiriusXM Channel 87. I'll host Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays with Paul. Tom Brawley will host with Paul on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So with me, you'll get the more fantasy kind of impact, and Tom is a degenerate bettor, so you'll get that angle as well on the show. So we're looking forward to being back.
And you can follow him, you can follow Joe at FG_Dolan if you want to follow on the X. Mr. Pat Fitzmaurice, you just knocked out a ton of stuff on the draft guide. So do you want to remind everybody what's going on? We got the Fantasy Pros draft guide that thing is live, and we got a crazy amount of stuff on there, and you are at the center of it.
Yeah, the Fantasy Pros redraft kit now up. Go to fantasypros.com and check it out. And yeah, I've got some positional primers where it's not just talking about some of the players, although there's some of that too, but just kind of a tactical approach to every position. Lots of other great stuff from our other writers too. So hope people check that out.
Check it out. And you can follow Fitzy at Fitz_FF. You guys want to check out the rankings that we were referring to and talking to, go to fantasypros.com/rankings. Check out all the different formats. Check out where the rankers and how many people we got on the ECR. It's a ton of fun. You can just peruse through it and make your fantasy football season even better. You can find me on Twitter at @IsItTheWelsh. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us, and good luck on all your massive draft picks for the season. We'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros. It's the Football Podcast. Goodbye for now.